continue, we left off. The Mishnah chapter discusses the sacrifices in the temple, page 24. So we're up to Shlamim, the peace offerings. So we have two types of offerings. You have the burnt offerings, and then you have the peace offerings. Specifically within the peace offering, you have the Thanksgiving offering, which we read earlier. And what this represents in our own personal temple, our own personal service of Hashem, is that we have those parts in our life which are holy, sacred, like the oil is totally burnt, a burnt offering in its entirety. So when you're dealing with holy things, I'm studying a holy Torah, I'm doing a holy mitzvah, I'm doing an act of kindness, then you have the Shlamim. The Shlamim, which is called a peace offering because a portion of the animal is offered as an offering, part of it is given to the Kohen, and the overwhelming majority of the sacrifice is eaten by the owners. So it makes peace. It's a combination of man and God and man and man. It's for yourself and it's for Hashem. This represents the majority, the overwhelming majority of our time, of our life, our adult life is occupied and engaged 6 days a week. You should work. Majority of our life is engaged in our mundane activities. We're eating, we're drinking, we're sleeping, we're surviving, we're paying bills. So we're not doing ostensibly, we're not doing anything holy or sacred. We're just going about our daily lives. And that's what the peace offering empowers us, that we should make peace, that we should also, everything that we do, our engagement in the physical and material world, we should also offer as a sacrifice. It should also be connected with Hashem. Whatever we do, we should inject a theme. All our actions should be for the sake of heaven. We should think about Hashem, whatever we do. And whatever we do, we should get to know Hashem. That godliness, our Yiddishkeit, should permeate every part of our life. As we go about our daily life, ordinary life, everything that we do should be connected with Hashem. That's what the peace offering represents, the Shlamim. So he says, Shlamim Kedoshim Kalim. It's a lesser sanctity. Shchitasan Vehamaaser Bazara. You can slaughter it any place in the courtyard. It can be anywhere in the courtyard. It doesn't have to be on the northern side of the courtyard, the northern side of the altar. It can be in the south of the altar, east of the altar, and even west of the altar, and even the west of the temple. Anywhere in the courtyard. And you sprinkle the blood, and the way you sprinkle it is, again, you sprinkle it in the two corners. You sprinkle it on the northeast corner, so then the blood splashes again, touches the eastern wall and the northern wall. Then you sprinkle it on southwest corner, so then the blood splashes and reaches and touches the southern wall of the altar as well as the western wall. So all four sides of the altar is touched by the blood, surrounds the altar, and you can eat it anywhere in Jerusalem. And l'chol adam, anyone is allowed to eat from it. There's no sanctity. Yes, it has to be eaten in Jerusalem. You're not allowed to take it out outside of Jerusalem. But anyone can eat it. You don't have to be a Kohen. Levite, the owners, you can eat it however you like. It doesn't have to be roasted. It can be barbecued. You can eat it cooked, the raw, however you like it. And you get to eat it for 2 days, meaning the day that you offer the sacrifice, that night, and the next day. Now, if you violate this, you leave over, then you have to burn it. If you leave over to the next morning, the second day, in the morning till dawn, then you have to burn it. But you're only allowed to eat it till the evening of the second day. Why didn't the rabbis here make a decree? Just like they made a decree, the sacrifices that are allowed to be eaten, the day that you offer the sacrifice, and the following night, the rabbis said you're not allowed to eat until dawn. You must finish eating by midnight, because they were worried if you're going to allow it to eat till the deadline, you may come to pass the deadline. So why don't you say the same thing? You should make a fence. You're only allowed to eat it till noontime. Because if you're going to allow to wait till the last minute, why do something now if you can do it tomorrow? You can do it later. This is a Jewish motto. So why aren't the rabbis worried? So the answer is because there's a big difference. There at night, there's two worries. Firstly, you're going to fall asleep. With your best intentions, you're up all night. Of course, you meant to eat it, and you're careful, and you're looking at the watch. But before you know it, especially Those who are up at night know that the end of the night is the most difficult part to stay up. The drowsiness just overwhelms you. So you're just going to fall asleep. So therefore the rabbi said till midnight. Here, no one is worried you're going to fall asleep in the middle of the day. You're not the imposter that you're falling asleep all the time. You're not falling asleep in the middle of the day. So you're not worried about that. The rabbis weren't worried. Secondly, the problem is at night, even with your best intentions, even if you're wide awake, it's hard to distinguish between before dawn and after dawn. Dawn is not clearly distinguishable. It's not sunrise, it's dawn, 72 minutes before sunrise. It's still dark outside. So to make that distinction, it's such a subtle distinction, with the naked eye, it's almost impossible to detect the difference between when the deadline is, night ends and the day begins and dawn begins. But evening is very easy to detect. It turns dark. It's light and then it turns dark. So there's no confusion. So you're not worried that someone is by mistake, by accident, going to miss the deadline and not eat it in time. So that's why there's no reason to make any decree here, any fancy. You can eat it the full time that's allotted to you, that's biblically allotted to you. The Torah allows you to eat it the day, the night, and the next day till evening. Murim behem kayetzer. The same rule applies. The parts of the animal of the peace offering is given to the kohen. The breast and the front leg, the right front leg, it's given to the kohen. So also the kohen can eat it for the 2 days and the night in between. He can eat it anywhere in Jerusalem. The only difference is Ella, but Shamurim, part that's given to the kohen, is sacred. But it's not like sacrifices of a greater sanctity. The parts of the sin offering or the guilt offering that the kohen eats. There, it has to be eaten inside the temple, and only the male kohenim are allowed to eat from it. Here, the family of the kohen is allowed to also participate. An Israelite is not allowed to eat it. It's sacred. But the kohen and anyone who's part of his family, Nechel HaKohanim, Shamurim Nechel HaKohanim, the kohen is allowed to eat it, and Sheim, their wives, Livneim, their children, Ulavdeim, and even their servants. They're Canaanite servants that we learn, not the Jewish servants. The Canaanite servants that becomes part of the household, that converts and becomes like part of the household. So he becomes part of the household of the master. So he is also allowed to eat from. Okay, now we come to the last mission. Habechor, the firstborn of a kosher animal. What does that represent? Spiritually, that represents the animal within the Jew, the animal soul within the Jew. It's an animal. It's a firstborn animal. There's your firstborn son you have to redeem, and then there's the firstborn animal that's holy, and you have to give it to the Kohen. As long as it has no defect, the Kohen has to offer it as a sacrifice. It's sacred. The animal is sacred. This represents spiritually that even the animal soul of a Jew is different than the animal soul of a non-Jew. So much so that the law of the Bechor, we're going to learn when are you allowed to eat the Bechor, how are you allowed to eat it. It's not like the sin offering and the guilt offering. The sin offering and the guilt offering, the Kohen has to eat it only that day and night. But the Bechor, the firstborn, the Kohen is allowed to eat it like the peace offering. You're allowed to eat it the day that it's offered, that night, and the next day, till evening. We're not comparing it to the guilt offering and the sin offering. Not only is the Jewish soul has no connection to sin. As the Zohar says, "V'nefesh kisechta," in the beginning of Leviticus, when the Torah discusses the sin offering, it says it's soul that sins. So the Zohar says the correct way to read it is with a question mark. Nefesh kisechta tava. Is it possible a soul should sin? How can a Jewish soul sin? And nefesh, mind you, is the lowest level of the soul. There are 5 names to the soul. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida. Nefesh is the interface between the soul and the body. It's the thought, speech, and action. Even that level, you have to read it with a question mark. How is it possible for a Jew to sin? The godly soul, can an animal jump into fire? Even by mistake. Sechta means, and you did an unintentional sin. How is it possible? When was the last time you rolled out of bed by mistake at night and hurt yourself? It's not possible. How could you sin? How could the soul harm itself like that? Self-destruct. It's not. It's a question. How is this even possible? So he's saying that not only don't we compare the firstborn animal, which is holy, to a guilt offering and a sin offering, because even the animalistic of a soul of a Jew naturally is not tempted to sin, unless we're educated otherwise, and unless we choose to sin, unless because of our environment. But essentially, naturally, Even the animal soul, the nature of a Jew, even our animal soul is not tempted to sin. We're tempted is that when we eat kosher and glad kosher, we love to eat it with relish, with zest. We get into the physical, into the material, but it's glad kosher. God forbid, we'll never even entertain that. The Rebbe says in Tanya that even the animal soul is shaded miyadoyin, as he quotes the Zohar. It's a Jewish animal soul. Even the shade, the demon of it, it's a Jewish demon. Not, God forbid, we're tempted to do something prohibited. By nature, we're just tempted to enjoy, luxuriate in our materialistic indulgence, but it's glad kosher. I would never even entertain it. God forbid, how can I sin against God? Even the animal soul wouldn't think to sin against Hashem, our Creator. So we don't compare the Bechor, the firstborn, sacrifice to the sin offering and the guilt offering. And then he says even more so, we don't even compare it to a thanksgiving offering. A thanksgiving offering also could only be eaten the day of the sacrifice and that night. Versus the Bechor is allowed to be eaten that day of the offering, that night, and even the next day. Why don't we even compare it to the tithe? Because a tithe, spiritually speaking, you're thanksgiving. What are you giving thanksgiving? You're giving thanksgiving because you were in danger, and miraculously you survived the threat, you survived the danger. What that means, spiritually speaking, is that you were in spiritual danger. All the four examples that the Torah describes in Tehillim, you could have drowned in the sea, traveling in the sea, you were in danger of drowning, you were in prison, you were in the desert, a parched desert, nothing to drink, and wild animals, and that you were sick. All of these things really, on a deeper level, on a personal level, is talking about spiritual threats, spiritual dangers to the well-being and the health of our soul. Because of the wild animals that are out there, we're thirsty, we're parched for anything spiritual, we're sick, we lust food that's no good for us, we lust things that are no good for us, are not attracted to things that are really healthy and wholesome and good for us. It's all a sign of spiritual illness. So we thank Hashem that we were saved from all these spiritual dangers. But what saved us from these spiritual dangers? It took a miracle. It's a miracle, and that's why we're giving thanks. We make a goyma, we thank Hashem, you cured us. Our life was threatened, our life was in danger. We could have died, we could have succumbed to illness, we could have drowned, we could have died from thirst, we could have died in prison. And we thank Hashem for our miraculous recovery, our miraculous freedom from prison, miraculous arriving from our journey in safety. In other words, what does that mean? It took a miracle to save our soul. That it took an act of self-sacrifice. It took an heroic act to save us, to do the right thing. It took an heroic act to be able to rise above the challenges. It took a heroic act for us to be able to maintain our spiritual health and well-being. So he's saying the animal soul you're allowed to eat, it's not even compared to the thanksgiving offering. Because from the animal soul of a Jew, it doesn't take a miracle for a Jew to listen to Hashem. It's the most natural thing. A Jew, even our animal, who's our wilde chaya, you can have a bull, you could be a sheep, you could be a goat, all the different animals. But even your animal, who's an animal, but even the animal would never even entertain, would never even think of, God forbid, to endanger my spiritual health, that I would need a miracle to overcome it. An act of self-sacrifice. It's not a heroic act. I'm not even tempted. The animal soul of a Jew is not even tempted to disconnect himself from Hashem. The temptation is that when the material things that you do, you enjoy a little too much, or you indulge a little too much. But it's glad kosher. God forbid I should do anything that violates against the code of Jewish law, the will of Hashem. So this is the Bechor. And then he says, Vehamaaser. Maaser is that when a Jew has 10 animals, 10 kosher animals, so he has to take these 10 animals into the barn, and then he lets them out one by one, and the 10th one, he has to strike with make a red mark, and declare this is the 10th animal, and this is holy. This has to be offered as a sacrifice. It has to be brought to the temple and offered as a sacrifice. The entire sacrifice is eaten by the owners, but it has to be brought as a sacrifice. So we see a big difference between these two sacrifices, Bechor and Maaser. The firstborn of an animal, of a kosher animal that belongs to a Jew, is automatically holy. You don't have to do anything to make it holy. It's automatically holy. It's the firstborn. Maaser, the 10th one, is the last one. It's not the first one, it's the last one. It's the 10th one. And you have to make it holy. You have to gather them all. You have to count it. They have to pass before you. You have to count it. You mark it. You count it. You designated it. And then it becomes holy. If you don't count it, it's not holy. And that leads to another difference. The rabbi said that today we don't tithe. We don't do this. We don't do the Maaser. For the simple reason that we don't have a temple today. So what are you going to do? A Jew who owns animals, every 10th animal you're going to designate as a sacrifice. What are you going to do with these animals? They're holy animals. They're sacrificial animals designated as a sacrifice. There's no temple today. And an animal that's designated as a sacrifice, it's holy. You're not allowed to work with it. You can't eat it. You can't touch it. You're not allowed to offer it outside the temple. So it's going to lead to a disaster. So the rabbis say today, don't tithe. If you don't gather it, you don't count it, you don't mark it, you don't designate it, you don't call it out, then it's not a tithe, it's a regular animal. But Bechor we do have today. A firstborn is automatically holy. Temple, no temple, doesn't matter. Whoever you are, it's holy. And you have a big problem. But you have nothing you can do. It's holy, and the only thing you can do is wait until it naturally develops a defect. Once it develops a defect, then you can no longer offer as a sacrifice. Then you just give it to the kohen, and then he can do whatever he wants with. So what this represents, these two sacrifices represent, the Bechor represents the first level, the firstborn. What's the first level of consciousness? That's the level of Chachma, the creative spark, Chachma. But Chachma, as we learned in Tanya, chapter 3 and chapter 18, Chachma is where the godly soul resides. It's where the godly soul, the holiness of a Jew, is expressed in Chachma. Because Chachma represents a level of egolessness. You're open to something greater than yourself. There's no sense of I, it's a sense of something greater than yourself. So Chachma is the sense of Hashem, where you sense the reality of Hashem. And it's beyond comprehension. You don't fully understand. That I don't exist, there is no ego, all there is Hashem. But Chachma senses that truth. Chachma senses that reality, that ego level of egolessness, that experience of egolessness, and to a reality that's greater than yourself and greater than all of us put together. And therefore, a Jew is ready to sacrifice his life for Hashem. That's what Chachma represents. And that's why Chachma is not something you have to create. You're born with it. You're Jew. You're born with it. It's natural. It's innate. It's inherent. The moment you're born, you already have that holiness. You're born with that level of Chachma, that level of self-sacrifice, that ability and readiness to sacrifice your life for Hashem, to make the ultimate sacrifice. The total sense of total egolessness. There is no ego, there is no I, all there is Hashem. So much so that you're ready to give up your life for Hashem, your very being, your very existence for Hashem. Unhesitatingly, it's not even a question. And that's why you don't have to do anything. It doesn't come from us. It's not because we meditated and we were deeply religious and deeply pious and we studied and we came to the realization and we came to the conclusion and we made a decision. What realization, what conclusion, what decision? You're born with it. You're Jewish. You're born with that instinct, with that holy instinct, that connection with Hashem, that readiness to completely, totally sacrifice yourself for Hashem, unhesitatingly. And that's why you don't have to do anything with it, and that's why that's present even today, even in the times of exile. Because when it comes to the readiness of a Jew to sacrifice his life for Hashem, we call that Pintel Yid, that core and essence that makes us Jewish. There's no difference, temple, no temple, doesn't matter. Jews are an exalted level, or it's a tremendous darkness, and Jews in a very low level. There's no difference. A Jew at any moment is ready to sacrifice for Hashem. A Jew is the same Jew today as he was when he stood at Sinai, when we left Egypt, crossed the sea, crossed the Jordan, stood in the temple, stood with Isaiah. There's no difference. The core and essence of a Jew is the same. The Jew hasn't changed one iota. The essence, the Pintel Yid, what makes us Jewish, the Jew within us, which is represented by the Bechor, that's something that comes from above. We're born with it, we have it, it's intact, it's whole, it's perfect, it's untouchable, undiluted, unchanging. Versus the Maaser. The Maaser represents the 10th level. What's the lowest level? The 10 faculties within a person. Maaser is the interface. It's thought, speech, and action. It's our interaction with the world outside of us. Thinking, speaking, and acting. Maaser is something that we have to sanctify. We have to make a choice, and we have to sanctify our thought, speech, and action. And really, that's all we have the power to sanctify. Because we do have the control, we do have self-control. Even if we don't feel godly, and we don't experience godliness, and emotionally, and mentally and psychologically, we're not there, we don't feel it, we don't sense it, we don't have that deep perception and deep understanding and that passionate, powerful feeling, emotional attraction and feeling and connection with Hashem. But we have that ability of self-discipline, of choosing to live Jewish, to act Jewish, to speak Jewish, and to think Jewish. So we are obligated to sanctify ourselves. That's the Maaser, that's represented by the Maaser. On the other hand, we don't have that. We don't have Maaser today, because Maaser also means sanctifying all 10 levels, all 10 of our faculties. In the times of the temple, we had the ability to sanctify all 10 parts of our faculties, every aspect, our brain, our mind, our heart. Today, we don't have that same ability. There's a destruction. There's a darkness. There's an exile. We're exiled from ourselves. We're not in touch even with ourselves. So we don't have the power. Therefore, the Torah says today you don't have to do Maaser. And this is the conclusion of the book of Leviticus. The book concludes with Maaser. The very last mitzvah in the book of Leviticus is mitzvah 361. It talks about the mitzvah of Maaser, tithing. And you're not allowed to redeem the tithe. Once you designated the tithe, it's a sacrifice, and you have to offer it as a sacrifice. How does the book of Leviticus begin? Adam ki yakrav miken. A person who will draw you near to them. As all the commentaries actually say, Adam mikem ki yakrav. A person from amongst you will offer a sacrifice. Instead, it says Adam ki yakrav, a person who will offer a sacrifice, mikem, from you. The Rebbe explains that he's referring to, Adam refers to Hashem. We're created in the image of God. The image of the chariots, they saw the image of Adam sitting on the chariot. That refers to Hashem. And we are Adam, we are created in the image of Hashem. So the Torah is teaching us on a deeper level. Korban, a sacrifice, comes from the word in Hebrew, kiruv, to draw close. But who takes the initiative? First Hashem draws us close. He pulls us in. Adam ki yakrev, and Hashem will draw us close. When there's an awakening from above, when Hashem sees that we're lost and we're asleep, and He wakes us up very gently, or He gives us a free sample. And then He says, now that I've awakened you, now it's time, mikem, now take from yourself and minabhema, from your animal, and now offer yourself, sacrifice yourself, develop an arousal from below. Because it's arousal from above doesn't have any sustaining power. Unless you put your finger, unless you exert some effort, unless you participate, it's not going to last. Easy come, easy goes. The arousal from above will come and go, and it will fade away, and it won't leave any impression. Now that you have this arousal, the purpose is that it should awaken you. Now awaken yourself. Grab the bull by the horn and change. The book of Leviticus, which is all about sacrifice, starts with sacrifice and ends with sacrifice. But it starts with the idea that Hashem takes the first step. He makes the first move. He awakens us. And that's also represented by Bechor. Bechor, as we said, first he says Bechor and then Maaser. Bechor is the firstborn. Bechor is something that comes from above. It's automatically sacred. Hashem makes it sacred. That represents the godly soul that's sacred on its own, an awakening that comes from above. The ability to self-sacrifice is pintele yid. We're born with it. We didn't earn it. We have it. We're just born with it. It's given to us free of charge. But then the Torah concludes with a sacrifice of Maaser. The Torah concludes with a sacrifice where we have to roll up our sleeves and we have to act and we have to make a sacrifice. And the reason why the Torah concludes with that is because that's the whole point. That's the whole purpose, and it's more precious to Hashem. The whole purpose of creation is because Hashem wanted us to change. He wanted us to change personally. He wants us to change the world around us. And when we change, and when the world around us changes, then Hashem changes. Prayer is a substitute for sacrifice. Prayer is when we offer our sacrifice. So when we offer our animal in prayer, when we change, We change our characteristic traits and personality, our animal soul. And then we change the world around us. We change the nature of the world around us. Then Hashem also changes. We avert the terrible decree, and we have the ability through prayer, we have the ability to create a change, to change our destiny. That's the whole purpose of creation. That's what Hashem desired. That's what Hashem wanted. That's why prayer is called service. We're servicing Hashem. We're giving Him what He wants. That's the whole purpose of creation, that we should change. And it all begins with consciousness. When you change and you become conscious of Hashem, and you're conscious of godliness, and you respond, and you're praying, and you're connecting, and you're elevating, and you're climbing the ladder, and you're changing, then that's the whole purpose of creation. That's what Hashem desires. So we're giving Hashem His ultimate pleasure. That's why the Torah concludes with the Maaser, the sacrifice. Leviticus concludes with the sacrifice of Maaser, because that captures the essence of what sacrifice is all about, what the ultimate purpose is, and this is much deeper. Of course, an arousal that comes from above is much higher. It's an abundance. It's a divine benevolence. It's grace from Hashem. But the arousal that comes from below is much more precious. It's much deeper. It gives Hashem tremendous pleasure. And that's the ultimate reason why it's lasting. Not only because we made a dent in ourselves, we made a vessel, a vehicle to sustain that awakening. But our awakening triggers a much deeper response from Hashem. The awakening that comes after our awakening is much deeper than the awakening, the initial awakening, that comes by way of grace of Hashem. Nothing to do with us, not of our doing, not of our making, which shows us it comes from a very lofty level, that Hashem is not affected by our apathy and by our indifference and by our behavior. Hashem awakens us and loves us and comes from a very lofty level. But it doesn't compare to the awakening from above that comes in response to our awakening. That's a much deeper, much more profound awakening, and that's longer lasting, that's more permanent, triggers the deepest response within Hashem. This is the pleasure of Hashem. This is His desire. That's the whole purpose why He created the world. So we are fulfilling His pleasure, fulfilling His desire. We're giving Him what He needs and what He wants. So that's the ultimate, the climax, the culmination of the whole book of sacrifice, the whole book of Leviticus is with Maaser, the sacrifice of Maaser.